Hey flower friends, it is your friend in flowers, Lisa Mason Ziegler, and welcome to another episode of the Field and Garden podcast. Friends, I feel like today I'm going to be sharing with you the skill that I believe was the most important thing that I developed over the last 30 years. But before we jump in, I just want to give an extra special welcome if this is your first time. I know that you have lots of choices, and I just appreciate that you've chosen to spend a little time with me here. This podcast is brought to you by thegardenersworkshop.com, which is home base to everything that we do. And friend, everything we do for you. So today I am going to share some lessons and practices from my life that has just really served me well. You know, experiencing and learning that there's a different way to go through life, both as a flower farmer, a business person, and then in day-to-day life, just turned the tables for me in a very good way. So I'm going to talk about the greatest skill that I developed. And yes, it's a skill that you're not born with, which is what I used to think. It is a skill that is developed, and everyone has access to it, and you have control over, where I had control over my own reaction and the way that I handled things. And I did not get this earlier in my young adulthood and even in early midlife. But I'm living proof and here to share that it is possible, because I would say, 100% different today than I was 30 years ago, in a very major way. And here's what that greatest skill is that I developed. You ready? It's how to be in a great mood, even though there is no reason to be in a great mood. And this has far more impact on your life and how your days go than I could have ever imagined. All right? And it has had just countless benefits on my business and my personal life, and in ways that I never imagined. And I just want to run through some of those ways. But before we get started, just to take a moment to share that I know, because you're a part of this group or you're listening to Field and Garden, I'm going to assume that you have an interest in learning more about growing cut flowers, whether that's for pleasure as a home gardener or for profit as a dreaming, budding, aspiring, or already established flower farmer. So what I want you to know is that thegardenersworkshop.com offers a vast selection of resources to help you on this growing journey. You know, you'll find over there a library of online courses from how to start and grow a flower farming business, on how to do seed starting, how to grow a little cutting garden in your backyard, and even growing indoor winter blooming bulbs inside your home. We also offer my books. You can connect with our sister podcast, Seed Talk. We have videos, a blog, my YouTube channel, and you can also connect with our live gardening shows that happens inside our app. You know, if you subscribe to our farm news, you won't miss anything. And I hope you'll explore all that we have to help you grow cut flowers, whether that is for pleasure or for profit, my friends. So I am going to just run through some of the things. I just sat down and brainstormed some of the things that I saw really affected by my wake-up call about 30 years ago. And I'm going to just tell you a really short story that really sparked it. So, you know, whether you believe it or not, I used to be a handful. And what I mean by that, I was pretty dramatic, like so many people are, reactive, I guess you would say. And when I met Steve, who is now my husband, he was, I know now, completely opposite of what I was in this department. He didn't seem to ever lose his temper. He always was a great listener. He was always helpful and compassionate, even when you wouldn't think. You know, I can remember describing him to someone one time when we first started dating. I said, you know, this guy is so different. It's like if you pushed him down the steps and then even spit on him, he would get up, brush his knees off, and turn around and offer you his hand to help you down the steps. I mean, I'm not kidding you. And that's him. That's the real Steve Ziegler. And a pivotal moment came during we'd probably been dating for 6 to 9 months or something. And he did something that upset me. And I can remember he was late, which was a little bit of a problem back when we first started dating, because he, was a part of Ziegler Plumbing, where plumber's work is never done. And he rarely got home when he thought he was going to get home. And, I don't know whether I had cooked dinner, and it was, I met him at his house and would cook and I'll sometimes have dinner ready for him when he got home, right? And he was late. And I just went off, just went off. And I will just never forget him standing there listening to me spew. And he just said in a very monotone way, first off, Lisa, there's just really no reason for you to go off like that. We can talk about this. It was out of my control. I couldn't get here. And then he told me why. And then I felt like a ding-a-ling, right? But what I realized at that moment was, how can I be like that? And I learned through trial and error that it was a choice. He could have bickered back or, fueled the fire or whatever you want to call it, but he didn't. And it just led to such green pastures, y'all. And so I guess you could say that he unknowingly mentored me in this department. And before I go on, I have some points here. I want to say that I know now the most important, significant choice that you make in your life is the person you choose to go through life with, your partner. They can make or break you. And this is just one perfect example of that, right? Because there's no question that Steve Ziegler led the way to me being what I am today without so much drama. So, all right, let's just move on. So one of the first things that I think that I had to accept was that, and I just don't like the word mindset. People use that all the time. But it's true. It's the way you think about stuff, right? Understanding that your mood is a choice, not just a reaction to circumstance. And that was my news flash. So one of the things that started to develop in me as that Steve and I were newly dating, right? And we had this argument, and I worked at Denby Animal Hospital then, which is a very busy, wonderful veterinary hospital that I worked at for like 18 years. It was always chaotic. It was always high emotions. People went from, being so afraid for their pet to how they can't afford whatever it is that they need sometimes. And it was just so busy all the time. And what that leads to is just really high emotional stakes, right? And for me to adopt this new mindset that focused on me being the good thing in these people's day, being in a good mood, even in the face of these highly emotional situations, was how I came to survive and came to love that job, which was not really the case before I started realizing this. I kind of was part of the emotional craziness up until this point. But being that bright spot, and I'll tell you what, I started doing. So people would come in and then, everybody always says, so how are you today? And I had a little phrase that I would say, I'm just peachy. Everything's just peachy, whether I meant it or not, right? And so many of the people that we took care of there at the animal hospital, we saw frequently, especially people with elderly pets, you would see them on a regular basis. There was one elderly gentleman who we just came to love so very much. And he would always say, and how are you today, Miss Lisa? And I would say, and I am just peachy. How are you doing today? Well, after a while of me saying that to him, he started bringing me peach milkshakes from Hardee's, which was right across the street from the animal hospital. And it was like just such a great engraving on my mind of some, because I love ice cream, y'all, if you didn't know that, of a positive reinforcement for me being positive. He reinforced me for doing that. And it just really led me to not only survive, but to thrive in that high stress situation. And I really came to love that job. And it was all because of that choice that I made to not fester, but to be a bright spot on that. Only about 1 in 20 of the hires that I made for the front desk at that animal hospital ever really survived. And it was because of the high emotion state. They were all well qualified, but their resulting moods, because of the way that they ingested or digested those situations, derailed them. So you have to really think, no matter what happens, I am going to be the light in this situation. I am not going to feed it. And so things that helped me to actually do that is, out of the gate, feeling grateful about stuff, starting my day off, just acknowledging the things that I am really thankful for, really changed my day. And I see things that just remind me, whether I can always remember my mother-in-law saying to me when she was in despair over something, she'd call me and say, you know what, I thought I had such a horrible thing, but I just spoke to so-and-so, and did you know? And she'd tell me about somebody was that sick or somebody passed away, and she said, there's always somebody worse off than you. And I will remember that phrase from her for the rest of my life. And, to think how basic, no matter what's going on in your life, how little things can make a difference. Did you know that there are people walking this world that literally have to walk 12 miles to get muddy water to drink? I know this because I have a cousin that started a really big water ministry a couple decades ago where they build bridges for people in third world countries to be able to access economics, water, and food. I mean, it's true, y'all. Be grateful if you can turn a spigot on. That's something to start with if you really feel like you're buried in a hole, right? Because when faced with what seems like the sky is falling, which is the way I used to react to things, go to the mere basics of all that we have, that you have, that I have, that others may not have. And it just brings to mind all the abundance, all the things. And I can still remember my mother-in-law also saying to me that Grandma Ziegler, who lived in the house that I live in now, we live in the Ziegler's homestead, how she didn't even pour out her soap water down the sink drain. She would wash in a basin so she could take it out and pour it on her rose bushes, which we know is soapy water, y'all. That's what killed the aphids and other pests, right? We've just taken so much for granted, and just thinking about those things and even writing them down really can change the perspective and help you get into a higher mode than what you may be in. So another thing is to give yourself some atta-girls or atta-boys. Sometimes we just have to remind ourselves how far we've come. Lots of ways to do this, and I do a lot of different ways. I sometimes, when I get up in the morning, I have a time of reading, writing, praying, and looking back over those journal prayer lists, what an eye-opener, y'all, to all that I have made it through. Stuff that I have overcome. I thought that my little world was going to end. And here I am looking back and reading it and thinking, oh yeah, I did do that. Writing stuff down is powerful, y'all. No one will ever see it. So pour your guts out. That's what I do. My sister will be appointed to burn my journals when I go, and that's the attitude that I write in it with. It's like, nobody's going to read this. Why would I not be candidly truthful so that I can just the reminder these things are going to help you so much in a year, in 5 years, or in 10 years when you look back on it. You're building your own therapy book, y'all. Really. All right. And I'll tell you something else that I never valued on how it affects your mood is getting up and moving. As a flower farmer, I got a lot of exercise, walking up and down the pathways. I would walk 20,000 steps a day easily. Well, now I'm not doing as much flower farming as I used to. My daily life has shifted some while I still do it. But I did not value, it kind of slowly left my life. But then I realized it, and now I know I just have to keep moving because it's a scientific fact, y'all. Regular physical activity releases endorphins, it boosts your mood, it just helps you to manage stress. And the only thing, the reason that I got kind of pushed back into realizing this was several years ago. My dog Tucker, a golden retriever, required hip surgery. He had to get an FHO, which is a femoral head osteotomy. And the surgeon, who's a friend from my work time in veterinary world, said, Lisa, for this to be successful, Tucker already had something going for him. He was really predisposed to being a thin dog, which I've never had a golden that way. And it's because he's so athletic. He is so active. He just ran and chased the ball all the time, right? So he was already trim, which was a major benefit. But he said, you are going to have to walk him 1 to 2 miles a day after his surgery, starting right after surgery, not going a full mile, but working up to that for this surgery to really work. And y'all, I love my dog. And I thought, no problem, I can do that. And it has just really, I always come home from my walks in a better place than when I went on my walks. And, I am not an exerciser. I was never a sports person. It doesn't come to me naturally. But y'all, you just have to make a decision. It's another choice. You just have to choose to do it. And as my sister said to me years ago, what's the point of owning your business if you can't take your dog for a 30-minute walk in the morning? Because I said, oh my gosh, I'm already so busy in the morning. You just have to make time for it, whatever time of day. It doesn't have to be in the morning, although I will say that's really kind of sets the pace for my whole day. And then the other thing that's been very significant for me is to just stop and take a breath sometimes. I frequently pray that for me to remember every hour some of these things that we're talking about, to remind me, because I get so caught up in what I'm doing and it's very busy. I have a lot of strings that are being pulled by different things during the day, and it's just easy just to totally forget about stuff, right? And so even if you have to set your phone to go off at 10 o'clock in the morning, at 12 o'clock, at 2 o'clock, just to say, take a breath. Remember, it's up to you. You can reset this day at any point in time, right? It's like being the coach of your own life, right? The coach that stands on the sidelines of the football team or the soccer team and sees the big picture. Sometimes we have to remind ourselves to just stop and take a deep breath, because it'll totally change your day. Whatever is powerful for you, taking a deep breath, saying a short prayer, whatever takes you out of potentially those heated moments. And you can really change or choose the outcome with your reaction. And this can just change everything. And it did change everything for me. And this is a really big one because I don't know if y'all have heard me say this before. I listen to the same series of books. I watch some of the same movies over and over again. Part of that is a dyslexic characteristic of knowing the outcome. And so it draws me to it. But what you submerge yourself into is what you become, right? It's like whatever you do over and over again just becomes more natural to you. And so I never understood this when I was younger. And I used to read and watch scary movies, bad movies, read books. I mean, I won't say authors' names because I don't want to downgrade anybody, but I would read stuff that would just fuel my anxieties. And I just didn't put it all together. I mean, watching the news, if that stresses you out, all of it, why not submerge yourself in uplifting stuff? Why do you think the Hallmark channels are such a bloomin' hit and so popular? They're warm and fuzzy, y'all. People just get sucked into them. And why submerge yourself into people, situations, and entertainment that just drain you of all the good energy? And here I will tell you just another little short story. You need to kick all that stuff to the curb. That's what I did. You don't need to do it. That's what I did. And I'll give you a great example that really helped me with this. One of my really lifelong friends, who's no longer with us, Laurie, who fought cancer most of her life that I knew her. She was diagnosed about 14 years before she passed away. I'm going to guess, I think it was like 10 years ago. She was diagnosed with advanced staged ovarian cancer, like the kind of cancer that you get it and you're gone quickly, right? But Laurie was quite a unique person, and she was introduced to a book, and I know I'm going to say his name wrong, by a doctor, David Servan Schreiber, and the name of the book was Anti-Cancer, A New Way of Life. And Lori, who was so much like my daddy, is why I think I was drawn to her, but she was quite a follower of rules. It's like if you showed her that this is the correct way to do it, I mean, she would do it hands down, you know. If she wasn't supposed to do this, she is just not going to do it. It just doesn't matter. Well, she read that book, and it changed her life. And Lori lived 14 years after being diagnosed with advanced stage ovarian cancer that was all through her abdomen. I mean, she met with researchers at NIH and the Cancer Research Center, or whatever you call that, in Washington, D.C., to learn about her experience. One of the things that he talked about in this book is how stress affects your day-to-day life and your health. And one of the things that Laurie did, is the point of me telling you this, is that it talked about getting rid of people in your life that just stress you out. She dumped so many of our high drama friends, y'all, and she just did it. I mean, Laurie made it real clear that, you know, this friendship does not benefit me at all. I mean, in classic Laurie demeanor, right? But it all worked, is what I'm saying. And what I'm just saying is, if you have negative things in your life and you are not thriving, you might take a look at eliminating them. Whether it's what you're reading, watching, scrolling, going out and hanging out with, you know, all food for thought. He encouraged and said that uplifting content and relationships support you so much more than you ever even know. And that is just really true. I have really applied that to my life in my content. And I just don't even, I have no interest in watching scary, sad, dramatic things that don't end well or that have a long, sad journey. I mean, I know they happen. I know they happen because I have people in my life that face stuff like that. I don't need to watch it or read it. And that's just my take on that. And then another great opportunity is to remember to celebrate the small wins. I am so fortunate to have a team at the Gardener's Workshop that reminds me of this all the time. It's like, don't you remember, Lisa? This is how it used to be. This is another great opportunity to look back, whether it's in that journal you have, maybe as a flower farmer. If you followed some of the practices that I encourage people when you're marketing your business, of posting on social about your journey as a flower farmer, look back at your feed, whether that's an IG or whatever platform you use, and look back and look how your flower growing abilities have changed, or your garden, or customers, or your you know what I mean? Look back and think, oh yeah, remember back when I didn't even know how to post or what to post, or do you know what I mean? We can all find little small wins to look back on and to really celebrate those little things, no matter how small. There is nothing too small to celebrate, y'all. And here is another one that I am particularly good at, to stop looking over your shoulder and keep looking where you're going. Stay present in the moment, y'all. Do not fret over mess that you missed out on or screwed up yesterday. I am so quick to kick something to the curb. And I can tell you that is a big piece of why I'm able to just keep moving forward. You've got to stop dwelling on the past and worrying about the future. I never truly understood, this is just one example of phrases that are probably in your day-to-day life that you don't understand yet. I never understood the song lyrics of that song that is, one day at a time, sweet Jesus. And one day at a time, I mean, isn't that like the driving theme in Alcoholics Anonymous? You cannot worry about tomorrow or think back about yesterday. You can only face today. And that does so much to boost you to focus on the day at hand. And that's a choice. That was such a mood booster for me, to stop kicking myself in the teeth about something I missed out on yesterday. And I still face this today, worrying about next week, next month, whether that is cash flow, weather that's coming, conversations I need to have that are difficult. Y'all, it just does not pay at all to do that. And this really led me to have this calmer state of mind. And I can still get caught up, y'all. I'm not saying I don't ever fall into that trap, but it's led me to have a deeper state of satisfaction and just to be in a better mood. And it gets easier with practice, as all of this does. I mean, if you'd have told me this 20 years ago, I'd say I'll never be that person. And here I am today. And here's a hard thing to consider. Entrepreneurship, being a business owner, starting a business, I don't care how small or big, is being nothing more than a fire extinguisher. Think about the life of a fire extinguisher. They only come out and get used when there's a fire, y'all. And you only need a fire extinguisher if the fire's not supposed to be there, right? You have to think about, you have to be willing to make these choices to actually be able to do this and to live a life free of drama and fear, and to be that shining light, right? I think we all want to be a shining light on life for those around us, especially our families, right? So what you need to realize is that's what business ownership is. Things are never going to all be done. There are always problems lurking behind every great idea, and disasters occur every single day that are out of your control. But guess what? You have to fix them. Going into this with an open mind, knowing that that's the job, does that not help like straighten your path a little bit and help you to face it. And you know what my attitude is? I heard this line in a movie, another one of those movies that I like to watch so much. It's the Intern, which is about a business, a small business, or it's not really that small, but anyway, when she gets faced with yet another disaster, it's like, all right, lay it on me. What is it? It's like, I don't like all the lead up. Don't lead up with a bunch of description before you tell me what the bottom line problem is. And that's where you get to be as a business owner, because that's what your day is made up of. So instead of freaking out that the sky is falling, that drops you into the sourpuss mode, approach problems with this is my job. And it'll totally change you. I mean, you then start to kind of look at problems as that's what I'm here for. And it will totally boost your mood. And then, leading by example, you just don't know the impact that you'll have on people. As flower farmers, our positive attitude can inspire and motivate not only your team, but your customers and the community that you've built. I can remember when Hurricane Isabel hit here. We didn't take a direct hit, but it was horrible. I mean, we were without power for weeks. 2 houses on my street were condemned because trees fell on them. It was really, really bad. Well, when that happened, of course, leading up to the hurricane, happened in September, this time of the year. I harvested my entire garden as hard as I ever had, because I knew that the wind alone was going to beat the heck out of my garden, right? So I had a cooler full of flowers. And of course, there was nobody buying or selling flowers for weeks after Isabel came through. And so me thinking, what am I going to do? I mean, when I say I had a cooler packed full of flowers, I had a boatload of flowers. You know what I did? Just because I didn't know what else to do with them, I filled up my little pull cart that's how I used to harvest, with like a big wagon. I filled the wagon up with flowers and just walked around my neighborhood and gave out flowers. And it just boosted people, right? And I mean, it was like it took their focus off of, their freezers that were defrosting, and it just really was a positive impact. But in reality, it also helped me to get my flowers that were going to rot in that cooler from rotting in that cooler, and it just led by example. Before long we were, sharing food, and we had a gas water heater at that time. My new building, the building that you see me go live from all the time, that building was finished like a month before the hurricane. A huge tree fell, but instead of falling onto the building, it fell in the complete opposite direction. I'm talking about a 100-foot gum tree. Anyway, that building had a gas water heater that could work even without power. And so we set up this, and I had drains in the floors of that building. My husband is a plumber. And we set up this giant ladder, that's a 12-foot ladder, with the hose connected to a spigot in that building, and people were able to come over and take hot showers in our building. We put newspaper over the windows. And you know what I mean? It's like, do you know how great a hot shower feels even when it's 100 degrees outside, which it was? How refreshing it was when you only have cold water at home. Demonstrating the power of a great mood in your day-to-day interactions can just be contagious in a very good way. And the benefits of maintaining a great mood is so far-reaching beyond what you can imagine. And it always also just leads to your life being better. It can boost your productivity, enhance decision-making, foster stronger relationships, and just creates this awesome ripple effect of positivity that touches every aspect of your business and personal life. And remember, it all began with me being so blessed to choose the right person to go through life with. And then by starting that response that I used of I'm just peachy, and saying it even when I didn't want to and I absolutely had no reason to use it. So friends, I hope this is an encouragement to you to know that you can find some good somewhere at even the most basic level of life. And friends, drop in over at thegardenersworkshop.com for resources, information, inspiration, tools, seeds, supplies, whatever it is that you need. We're there for you, friends. And until we meet again, friends, just remember, be in a good mood even when you have no reason to be in a good mood. It's your choice.